Hey folks, welcome back. Okay, so it's time to tackle these Nazca mummies. Now, as some of you know, I occasionally appear on the UAP Files podcast. And just over a year ago, we were asked to interview Dr. Zalce Benitez, who was head medical doctor for the Mexican Navy and is the lead scientist studying these incredibly strange mummies found in Nazca in Peru. Now, I will be very honest. When I was beginning my research to interview Dr. Zalce, I was incredibly skeptical. They had been presented with no preparation, no supporting data, and just wheeled out in little boxes, which caused scorn, confusion, anger, and a flood of memes, which I am guilty of sharing one or two and having a good laugh at myself. But it was during the research that I started doing to prepare for the interview where things got really interesting. Things like the presence of osmium, which is an incredibly rare element found inside them, the incredible variation in their genetic makeup, the proof of them not being tampered with either pre or post mortem. So they are tridactyl, dactyl meaning finger, like pterodactyl, and tri obviously meaning three. That seems to be the only thing that they've got in common. Some have avian components, others have mammalian, others seem to be like a great ape. They're all sorts of different sizes, but they seem to be legitimate. And I still don't know what to think. You're not going to hear the word extraterrestrial, for example, because we're not going to make that mistake of coming to conclusions. Thankfully, another fantastic contributor to the UAP files and a good friend, Aztlan, has been studying this like an eagle. He is directly in communication with all of the main people associated with this, including the scientists, the researchers, Jaime Maussan, and nobody has done a better job of collating the data and evidence involved with this study. He's put that together in a fantastic Substack article where he gives his personal account of how he felt his own journey going through and investigating this. And he intends to expand upon this to make it the absolute best, most concise, concentrated source of data for anybody that wants to study this subject, because he and I are convinced that whatever comes of this, it is going to redefine how we think of our history and role on this planet. So, he and I are going to have a really good chat about his Substack and his findings so far, and a really good back and forth about what this might just mean. So, I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it.
I know,
So, how's
right?
life?
Life is good right now. I'm at a point where, things are very exciting. There's a lot going on. Yeah, a lot of projects that slowly I'm going to start revealing.
Nice. Oh, I like it. I like it.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, your article is amazing, dude. I know a lot of
Appreciate it,
people
man.
have like I know a lot of people have been putting out, documentaries and podcasts and stuff like that, but to have it all in writing for people to read at their own speed, but also like coming from your perspective as one of us that's kind of, just analyzing it and trying to find your way through the story, I think is really, really valuable. It's a really good Substack. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
well, it's true, man. I mean, you've been working on this for just over a year, is it?
Yeah, man, it's been a while. And that's the thing is, it's been like on and off for like about a year, maybe even
Hmm.
more. I would have to go back and see like when I first had the idea, right? We had the idea of three things. Um, One of it obviously was like tackling the subject,
Yeah.
right? Which is like I don't know, doing like a monthly thing about it, maybe just brushing upon like as news were coming out. The other thing was the fact that everything was very scattered, right? All the different
Yeah.
data, links, different videos of people involved. Um, so I said maybe we should have like a page or something where we can like consolidate everything, centralize everything, which is exactly what Gonzalo did at the end of the day. like the most important details, he was able to do tridactyls.org, right? Which was great. But the other thing that was what can we make so that people that are jumping into the subject or maybe have been reading upon it can have like a good snapshot of everything, right? And I feel right now, so Gonzalo beat us to the website, which is great. I'm so happy somebody was able to do that and in a very professional way. And Jesse Mitchell's did a really amazing documentary on it now. So we just needed that third step, which is that that overview in an article. So I'm happy to be able to contribute that, even though for me it was a very scary endeavor on the fact that I'm not a writer. I'm not a researcher. I'm just a very passionate person that saw being important in the subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, but I think that sums up most people that to tie it into UAP. That's the journey that everybody goes through. Like, if regular people see something extraordinary, it really compels them to want to learn everything that they can about it. And then it's like, well, how do you navigate this? Because we're not all medical bioscientists and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of value in you can see you in the Substack article, and I think that's got massive value to it. I guess to wind it back a bit, what what about it first snagged your interest?
I think I want to say about like for 90% of the population, including myself, thought the same thing. As soon as, Jaime Maussan revealed those things, uh, those balls, right? Those things in the Mexican congressional hearing. And my thought was like, what the hell? Somebody to be so bold and like hold something that's probably, a hoax, something that could probably be um revealed within a week that it's what can compel people to do that. And then I thought I saw Jaime Maussan, and like my personal experience is that anybody that is comes from like a Hispanic background is can be familiar with Jaime Maussan, especially like in the 90s, because he was always like the main paranormal UFO person of all Latin America since the 90s. I mean, he's been doing journalism. He's been on TV for about more than 50 years. When it comes to paranormal stuff, I think he took on the baton as the main person in 1992, right? So seeing him, I kind of understood his passion, his drive, because that's something that like that's his forte and things that that he focuses on. But my whole thing was what did he do to move congressional people in Mexico, also scientists to back him? That was the greatest interest for me. And so the first thing that I did obviously was like look at who were the scientists, what were the credentials. And the more I looked into this, I became super shocked and surprised. Like these are people of the highest caliber. They're not just like your, you know, not to step on anybody's toes, but like they're not just any like how would I say this? Scientists that are working like at a local clinic or something or a local establishment. These are people that are heading top institutions. And this is, you're talking about the chief manager per se of the Navy forces, the head of the forensics department that he led this. So I'm like, what could compel him to put his license on the line on something that in 2023 can be, can easily, I assumed, be proven to be a hoax, to be fake. And I mean, the person that made one of the greatest comments, and I didn't expect him to do so, was Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he is, for whatever reason, doesn't really lean to the UFO subject. He said, at least these guys are bringing in something that can be looked at, you know, as opposed to the congressional hearings in the United States, where there's a lot of talk about like certain beings, certain craft that's been reverse engineered behind closed doors. I mean, right now that is the limits to where we're at here in the United States. At Mexico, some people are bold enough to be like, "Look, this is the evidence, and anybody is welcome to come see it." Like that's very bold, you know. That's a very bold thing to do. But that was the initial interest for me, and then when I started seeing videos of Dr. Jose Zalce Benitez actually giving his testimony, the things he was saying were very compelling,
Mm.
very compelling. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it
that's what.
was for me. I mean, I still don't know. Like, I'm baffled by it, but I'm definitely not on any side of the fence. But it got off to, I couldn't have imagined a worse launch for anything to the public than
100%.
because the thing is, like, I'm not saying this to be mean to it, but
Oh, a thousand
what the
percent.
what the public saw was we just had a congressional hearing with David Grush and Ryan Graves, so everybody knew Ryan Graves as this like cool straight edge fighter pilot guy. Then all of a sudden, it was just like wheeled out with like ta-da, like oh my god, what are these? In little velvet boxes, and you could see because we'd kind of got to know Ryan Graves as this straight guy, and then we saw like he kind of reflected the horror of the UAP community at that time. And
Right.
then the next thing we saw, it was on Gaia, which like I know a lot of people really like. Personally, I think they swing far more to entertainment than education when it comes to this stuff. And it was just like,
100%.
what are they doing? And then obviously it was like a feeding frenzy with the memes and the cake aliens and like, it was, I felt bad. And then for me, when we on the UAP files, we got to interview Dr. Zalce Benitez, that was an absolute like iceberg
Doctor.
for me, like a complete rebound because
Yeah.
here was a guy who was speaking science and not speaking sensationalism. And you could just see, even if I mean, I don't understand a great deal of science, but this man was telling the truth and he had the credentials
Yes.
and the CV to back up the fact that you should listen to what he's got to
I
say.
mean, the number.
The second one is I I put all my knowledge and I put all my backgrounds and I put all I have to study this. So if this possibly a fake, I'm so crazy to do this. Okay. So what I'm trying to think here is if I put my whole being in this is because I'm sure this is real. I'm not a liar person. I'm a scientific, forensic scientific. So I'm telling you the truth, but I need help. I need help to do more. I need help to get deeper in the studies, in the analysis, and get more results.
What he's got to
I
say.
mean,
And
the
the
number.
third
I mean, yeah. The number one thing that that just intrigued me is the fact that he's they've been saying this from the beginning. He said it in our video. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but come and do the work.
Yeah.
And they've been doing this from the beginning. And I I definitely share the same viewpoint with you, or Dr. Nolan just said, a couple of days ago regarding, how Jaime Maussan works. And reviewing the history of this, I'll tell you two things. And it's like the same point, but now we have two, right? Is what would have been the best way to showcase this is exactly doing things the right way, like you know, Gary Nolan said, which is like doing science little by little the correct way. Problem was that in Peru, and the authorities, Ministry of Culture, have worked a way to contain, the story so much, and they created a whole backlash campaign that
Mm.
there was no how can I say this without without stepping on toes and making Jaime Maussan like being treated, unfairly. is that there was no Gary Nolan that would have been able to bring the subject out in the open had it not been
Yes.
somebody as bold as Maussan. You
Yeah.
understand? Like somebody
Yeah. Yeah.
our age, somebody in the modern era understands how things should, you know, how things should proceed. But somebody like Jaime Maussan, you're not gonna budge this man. He sets his eyes, his passion, his focus on something. You're talking about a guy that is 7 decades long living. He has formed a personality and a way of doing things that this guy's just a train. And when he saw that this subject was meaningful enough, it doesn't matter if he's wrong. He's gonna crash through the wall and show it to the world and make his bold statements, without full verification. But at least at the end of the day, he is the reason. He is, and I'll say this to anybody else. He is the number one reason the world knows about this game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Now
point blank,
I'm
take
like
it however you want.
I've started off as bad cop, okay, but I think it's definitely worth pointing out that as much as it was suboptimal in terms of scientific legitimacy, what we got was classic catastrophic disclosure. It was just like
100%.
bang, here they are. And even though it was laughed at, everybody knew about it. I mean, people that don't really know what I do in my bedroom making videos were going, dude, what's the deal with these things, in Peru? And so in a
Right.
way, this you can't put a lid on something when you just detonate it, and even if it becomes a meme, it's in the public's mouth,
Yeah.
and
The way I
that
see it
gives
now
you
is
a
like
foundation
I'm
to
in
redeem it.
Maussan. Yeah. The way I see it, I'm not sure if you watch any like, MMA or you follow any fighting, but like Jaime Maussan is like the Conor McGregor of like ufology.
Oh my
It's just
god. Don't say that, man.
no,
Well,
you know,
I don't know. I mean, yeah, okay. Yeah,
he's
I
just gonna
just
say
don't.
whatever he's gonna say to make the
Exactly.
statement and to make the news,
Yeah, he's gonna get a lot of attention. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
whether or not he's right, that's something that he has to prove.
That's very true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we interviewed Jaime, and that again, I just judged him as the man, and the guy's won awards from the UN. So for as much as it's easy to only see him for the kind of sensational things and the stuff that's easy to mark, like he's done great work, and
Right.
like we said, he's managed to cross that barrier into every culture and the whole English speaking world saw that thing that he was talking about. Whereas, the work he's done in the past hasn't always made it to the UK and stuff like that. So
Right.
whatever happened, it worked and it got people talking about it, and it made it to Gary Nolan and stuff like that.
And
But
we have to keep in mind that like, and we have to be truthful. It's like he is a person whose style and approach is super outdated. It's super outdated. And yeah, even though it worked, it's just like that doesn't mean that's how we should continue to proceed now with the new updates that are going on. But it's just like seeing
it
it
got
from
eyes
all
on.
sides. Yeah,
Yeah, it got eyes on around the world. I mean, you'd got Gary Nolan being asked on podcasts like, "What's the deal with these Nazca mummies?" And so, if you're gonna send the guy letters and emails 3 a week and not get a reply, that got it under his nose. So again, like love him or hate him, like it was effective for getting
yes,
attention onto it. And then you went to the press conference.
right,
So talk us through a little bit of that, because I want to get into the Ministry of Culture and this, whether it's counterintelligence that's happened or definite constriction, and like how you feel about whether you can see a reason why they were doing that, or if they are
right,
genuinely just a negative actor.
right. So the reality of my experience is at least two things. Number one is that these bodies, whatever they are, whoever constructed them, or if they are authentic, biological beings, they're unique. 1,000% they're unique. Whether it's to study them for archaeological, anthropological, biological, whatever reasons, they're very unique bodies. And for whatever reason, from the beginning, the Ministry of Culture and the authorities improved on everything in their power to, create this backlash campaign and to destroy the story. Why? That is the question. Why? And they've tried to break into, the universities at least 5 or 6 times to confiscate the beans. It's like, if these are dolls, why are you going through all that, trouble to, limit the world from studying bodies? What are you scared of, or what is the issue? That's where
Yeah.
we're at right now.
I understand to play devil's advocate, looking at history, what happened in Egypt when we discovered the Egyptian mummies and the tombs there. Like, it was raided, pillaged, and before archaeologists could get in there, there was the term of mummy dust. Like, they were getting brought over to England and ground up and snorted by rich people, and the ability to study them was lost. And so, again, to play devil's advocate, I understand why you would want to pump the brakes, because they were found by a tomb raider, Mario. He was under the pseudonym,
Right.
but you do a disservice to it by discrediting it, because they didn't just say, no, you can't take these, that's illegal. Like, they were saying they studied dolls, blatant dolls, and then went, look, this is one of them and it's fake. Like, so
Right.
you are, whilst we've got the Nazca lines there and we've got geoglyphs with tridactyls on, which everybody knows, and it's a World Heritage Site,
Right.
it seems more sensible that they could have said, yes, these are important discoveries and they're protected and they are, sacred to our culture. Because when you consider history at that time, one of them, is it Maria, is 1750 years old.
Right.
So you'd got the Mayans just coming to power. You'd got the Han Dynasty in China, and I think it was Emperor Trajan or something like that in Rome. Like, the Roman Empire had conquered the world, and then in a cave in the driest place in the world,
Right.
you've got these things, and so, like, this isn't like the distant past of dinosaurs and the Silurian hypothesis and
Yeah.
all of that people talk
This
about.
is recent.
This is like 2 blinks away. This is a traceable lineage of our generations
Right.
to get back to, and these things were a part of the global biosphere.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And see, that's the thing. It's just like, whatever they may be, they're unique. That has always been the message since the beginning. These are unique specimens, like Dr. John McDowell wants to call them. He doesn't want to call them, he doesn't want to give a definition right now, but they're definitely unique specimens. The other side is that it's the continuous backlash, and number 3 is, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to like study them? Is because they've made it this hard. They haven't created laws or the permissions. Bodies either outside, having the right personnel to study them. Yeah, that's what it is. Going back to, you yourself said about the raiding, the tomb raidings that's been going on, right? When people think of mummies, they might think of Egypt. I think some other places. Obviously, Egypt is always the number one place, but I didn't know this until I did this research. But like, Peru is actually the number one spot for studying mummies, because there's hundreds and hundreds of cases that have been found and are continuing to be found. Like, the amount of mummies in Peru, just like, it's the number one spot. And we know, at least since the Spanish, invasion, Spanish conquest, whatever you want to call it, is the looting of these archaeological places continues to our date. To our date, right now, there's huaqueros, That's what the Tomb Raiders, that's what they're called in South America. Looking for more artifacts. Whether it's whatever it is. And so there's another thing to consider. It's just the Vaquero, Prawix, he actually sent some of these dolls initially, right? It's in my paper. He initially sent these dolls that were obviously artisan burial dolls, and the Ministry of Culture studied them and gave back the dolls, gave back the stuff. Why would they do that? Because they didn't think it was important enough. Because of two things. Because not only are Vaqueros looting these archaeological sites all the time, but people within the Peruvian authorities themselves have been implicated in black market schemes for decades. And they know this. And some of these are actually the ones leading the backlash. So just consider that. So when Thierry, the people at the Inquiry Institute, send them a letter says, we have found these things, right? And they let them know. All of a sudden, these things are worthy of backlash, worthy of persecution, and worthy of trying to confiscate. Why? That is the question. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but there's a trail that it's obvious that there's a lot of bad play, a lot of bad playing going on.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Peruvian mummies, because you've got the Paracas culture there, and one of the criticisms by people who don't know better is that, well, head elongation and intentional deformation of the human body was a cultural practice. But yes, the Paracas used to tightly bind the heads so they would get like the cone head thing. But these are not. These have been tested and definitely show that they have not been either post or pre-mortem modified in any way. And
these,
the,
yes.
the preservation technique. So they're covered in cadmium chloride and diatomaceous earth, and that shows a very advanced technology to do it. They've not just desiccated and bound and covered in oil, which works, but is very simple. Like, this is advanced chemistry from a cave on the driest place on the planet. This isn't come out of a laboratory. I'm so interested in where they were found. I know that you shared the picture of like a diagram which is unconfirmed, but it shows that there were items and totems and almost ritualistic stuff that's been left, and then the bodies kind of higher up. But I would just wish we had some more context. And
but that's the thing, like the article that I wrote is a rough draft, or at least a central piece for people to start with the subject. But what I am going to do is deep dive to every single subject, every single note within my article. I'm going to embellish, the backlash campaign, how it started, the way it was made, why some of these mummies look different, like the skull. The fact that every single person that has studied like elongated skulls, all these scientists are able to see and determine what techniques were used, where was the depression, where's the evidence of the pressure on the skull that formed these elongated skulls that you cannot see on these bodies. These bodies are genuine. Their skulls were like, why? Right? That's another thing. And so all these subjects, I'm definitely gonna create different articles for them and embellish them.
That's
I have a
fantastic.
lot of information, but I don't want to overwhelm our readers. Right?
Yeah,
It's a long rabbit hole.
It's a journey, and I think that just like the UAP stuff, you have got people above, doing counterintelligence for whatever reason.
Right.
And you've also got the useful idiots, for want of a better term, who are just sat on Reddit going, I don't believe this because I don't believe this, and cherry picking information in order to attempt to force the data to fit what their conclusions are. And so when you look at, yeah, they've got an elongated head, but they don't go deep enough to realize that actually there's no sign of manipulation. These things have vascular systems. They are not something that have had digits removed like some kind of prehistoric yakuza. They are fully formed beings without anything cut off, manipulated, elongated at all. And then you can't cherry pick. So their
Right.
fingerprints are lateral as opposed to like ours. And you're telling me that somebody's kind of gone in there and hand carved a lateral fingerprint in a cave
Look,
1700 years ago, you know?
right. I wouldn't have a problem if, you know, they were made, they were crafted. I wouldn't have an issue if they were all burial dolls, right? Purpose. I think that's what they're called them. What I have an issue is how dismissive you can be with that. Have the University of Peru that did a study, an intense study with all the resources that they have for 4 years, and then publish their report saying that they have found no manipulation of these beings and that they're all, you know, every body part is it's a genuine, like genuine biological specimen. For one, that's the university. But then you have the forensics of each country, up the 100% top forensics of Peru, studying that different studies, and he concludes like these specimens are real. Then you have somebody of the likes and caliber of, Dr. Zalce Benitez, who is the top forensic expert of the armed forces of Mexico, saying the same thing. And now you have Dr. John McDowell. For those readers that don't know who he is the top guy, arguably the top guy in the United States, saying that these are worthy of study. So how much more convinced can you get to realize that these bodies are incredibly amazing, and somebody made them at a shop, or there's a laboratory that made them somewhere 1,700 years ago. That in itself is worthy of study.
Yeah,
You
perfectly
know?
said. Perfectly said. Like I wondered because I'm a dinosaur nut, and I know that some fossils have been found with stomach contents and stuff, and that shows that that thing was alive. And I did wonder about the mummies, but whether they had been, had never lived. And yet,
Mhm.
kind of the poses that some of they're in they imply that they've been alive and curled up and died. But for me personally, like some of the stuff that I find so jaw dropping, which really is why it's so important, is because like Josephina has eggs
Right.
as in avian eggs with shells. So that implies avian DNA, possibly, because they're the only things that lay eggs, apart from a platypus, I think. But then you've got Santiago, which is a fetus with baby teeth.
Right.
So we've got mammalian or primate DNA. So it's not even just like they were making, and I say making in the loosest possible sense,
Right.
creating a specific life form. Like Maria, I think, is 5'8" or something like that. Some of the other ones are 3 to 4
My
foot
height, like
tall.
5'7".
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, me too, me too. But like it's almost like a sketchbook.
Right.
Like a prototyping of life,
Yeah.
which
And
is
you see,
something that we can't do now.
all I'm saying is this: is like, look, this is how 100% I feel like they're genuine bodies, right? But even if you want to play devil's advocate and say, okay, somebody made these, right, somewhere. But the fact that, like, say, they have eggs. Okay, somebody implanted, I don't know, fucking chicken egg on one of the bodies. There's an embryo. the embryo is tridactyl, like the feet and the fucking
Yeah,
hands are
yeah.
tridactyl. Okay, somebody made maybe a burial doll that's tridactyl and implanted in the stomach. Okay, and then Santiago, the baby morphology. How is it that its head is just like kind of like a human head, where it's really big, the body's smaller, just like a baby morphology. So what Dr. Zalce said, and the reason he's completely convinced that these were living specimens, is the fact that he says you can get the best laboratory in the world and have unlimited funds of money, and maybe I'm able to believe that they are able to like recreate or make bodies. Okay, but you cannot deny and you cannot recreate historical medical issues that these bodies had while living, and the natural process of decay and becoming a fossil for almost 2,000 years. That progression and those historical medical issues that the bodies had, you can never, impossible.
Yeah.
There's no way. How can you do that?
Yeah.
That's why these bodies were real. You
Yeah.
know, the teeth
That,
decay, a lot of these things. And so it's an incredible story.
yeah, it
It
is.
is.
And then to add a layer, you've got Montserrat, which is pregnant, has a womb, and so that's an entirely different like reproductive system, not just avian and eggs and stuff like that. The whole thing is a fundamentally different evolutionary chain.
Right.
So just like you were saying, without even getting to the point of saying how did they exist, what did they eat, how did they get there, did they, like the fact that somebody had the technological and scientific knowledge to even, I mean, I can't build a model airplane without making mistakes, even
Hmm.
if this was a construction, an exercise, like some prehistoric Dolly the sheep experiment to do cloning or whatever. Like it worked, and it was incredibly done. And then they weren't just thrown in the trash; they were preserved purposefully. And just
Right.
like you said, you can't fake the aging and the relative decay and degradation that's took place. So whatever they are a fundamentally important part of the history of the planet.
Yes. And this should be the number one thing, um, if not talked about, at least research be the number one thing that we should do. Like this would, I feel like this would catapult us to our next evolution of understanding or of the planet and the nature of our connection, us on this planet as well, because it shares DNA with positive as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we argue about the Younger Dryas meteor impact as like 12,500 years ago. This was like 1,700 years ago. This is like look over your shoulder history, and there it is. And
Right.
and something extraordinary happened, which demonstrates almost alchemical levels of science. So I will say, like, just to be bad cop again for a minute, I in the study of it, like the main argument is everybody says these are real. Well, like a rubber chicken is real, cake is real. What's important is they are not fabricated.
Right.
But again, and like another giant question mark is they don't seem to be genetically related. You know,
Yes, that
and
is true. Hmm.
and another thing that I want to mention is I know I'm just talking about me and my biases, but like the boogosphere, I it makes my toes curl, and it looks like somebody bought it off Timu. But these things, they've got osmium implanted, and that is like the rarest of rare materials. I think we only
Yes.
discovered it about 150 years ago,
Yes.
and then
Right.
1,700 years ago, sat in a cave in the driest place on the planet. Like these things have it, and they are genetically fused to it.
Yes. It's not like it wasn't like just implanted on top. It was actually infused with with the skin.
It's a part of them. They are a
Yes.
cybernetic organism, for want of a better word. It's a
Yes.
symbiotic part of their genetic makeup. I mean, I watched the motorcycle racing, and half of those guys have got metal plates and screws and stuff like that in, but they are just screwed in. They're literally just like in there
Right.
to, in the most ramshackle way. And these
It's
are
not a clean thing.
organically integrated.
Yes. Why? For what reason? And how were they able to get that amount, of that material? And what was the procedure to implant it on those dolls?
Hmm.
And why would they do that to dolls
Yeah. Yeah.
if they
And
were dolls?
I think it's harder to. I can't remember, but I did. I mean, this is like a long time ago when I researched this, but you have to refine it from platinum, or it's harder to refine than platinum, like to a 1 to 100 scale of for every bit of platinum you get this micron of osmium if you're lucky. And so I know that some of these things were being sold on the black market for $300,000, and yet like they didn't know that implanted in it, or maybe even just, I think implanted is the wrong word, because it seems that it's a natural part of them, of their formulation, was this ultra rare material. So, if it's all a scam for attention and money and stuff, why are they? This isn't
Right.
tinfoil and chicken bones. It's one of the rarest resources known to man.
Right.
So it's these kind of questions that the skeptics and debunkers, and not the neutral ones, which are useful, but the biased true non-believers are ignoring, because there's just no answer to that. That just doesn't make financial, business, or any kind of biological sense.
Yes. It's kind of like the UFO topic, the UAP topic. We're really way past, are they real? Are UFOs real or not? Are UAP real or not? It's just like everybody has concluded that they're real. Not only, I mean, civilians, individual scientists, academia, top institutions like Harvard, Stanford, the government, the military. I would have an issue if everything's coming, if the whole story or a narrative is coming from one side. That's where I would have an issue. If a narrative is just coming from a government, it's just coming from the military, then it's obvious that there's a narrative that they're trying to push. But if everybody is confirming that there are things, in our airspaces that have been proven through multiple modes, like radar, infrared, what have you, and they're physical objects. With these mummies we have come across, we are now finally across whether are these things real or not. No, they are. Now the question is, what are they? What's their nature? How were they made? Or how did they live? That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, yeah. I watched an interview with Colonel John Alexander, and he was talking about the example of, he was like, okay, imagine an F-22 Raptor crashes over some undiscovered tribe in the Amazon. Like, they're not going to be flying around in F-22 Raptors. They're going to have better spears. Like they interpret it, and they might be the slightest little thing that they'll pull off it and be like, "Oh, wait a minute." To what we understand, this is going to be the next step, and this is where we make the mistake as humans of trying to have this comfort blanket of knowing that we understand the whole world, and
Right,
they do it with UAP. People are like, "Oh, they're from the Pleiades, or they're the Anunnaki, and they're here to take our gold, and they want the soul." And everybody's got this crazy story about something which is totally beyond our understanding.
right,
But since before we had history, human beings have seen stuff that shouldn't be there, and we are crying out in Congress and in the press for, let's see these crash retrievals, let's see the bodies. But when it comes to these things, It's like we've got that first. You know, we had the
Right.
geoglyphs, we had the legends that these things were here. When you see some of the ancient art etched on walls with clay and stuff of these exotic figures, um,
Right.
and now we have got something tangible to study. So, what's enough? Where's that red line for people where they'll go, okay, this is worthy of note, you know?
But the reality is that it's never going to be enough. What has to happen is that it's like going back to times in history where we had massive paradigm shifts. You know, like top scientists, Newton, people that discovered something that was found. It was the paradigm wasn't shifted within days or even weeks, decades. That's where we're at right now. It's just the things that we know that we have come to discover are gonna unfortunately be assimilated slowly, but faster if we continue to push further. You know. So,
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, that's just it. Like, we don't need a full backstory on this. We just need the humility to be that kid in school that goes, I don't understand this. Like, can you explain it? Can we go over this again? And I think the key is people like yourself that will walk us through this, give us something in our hands where we can follow it along and go up and down as the data comes it and just hold it lightly and see where it goes, but be open
mhm.
to doing it wherever the data leads. So
Right.
so what's next for you then, dude? What's your next step, if you're allowed to
Resting
talk
for a
about
bit. I'm just kidding.
it?
Finally
Yeah.
starting to focus on going back to the gym because my thing is just like the more I saw the interest come back and if the Victor was working on it, like in the back burner. And I'll be honest, I want to say my article probably covers about 8% all the information that I've been able to gather. But why have I not published, kind of authoritative? It's just too much. Not only is it too much, but there's just so many things that need to be verified. Uh, but this subject is way more complex. It's at least worthy of like an 8 episode Netflix special. Like, that's how much information there is. I think what's next for me is embellishing a lot of the questions that, like, you yourself have had. Um, Keeping the readers updated, important, novelties that happen. And other than that, just, enjoy the ride. I'm excited about the new hearings, congressional hearings that are coming in the United States. The the possible integration now of Gary Nolan in this case. I mean, just so many things are just exciting. You know,
Yeah,
me
definitely.
coming out of the shadows finally. Because I've been contributing in the shadows, and I'm a very shy person. No, but this is more important than any of us. It's important to not only learn for ourselves, but now to start sharing it with our friends because we are now at the tip of a paradigm shift where we have to stop being so dogmatic of everything of our frame of reference, whatever our frame of references are, whether it be political, religious, inclinations. We have to live in a world where we understand that it's not even two colors, black or white. It's not even two sides of the same coin. It's literally a sphere, and the sphere has different sides, and the sphere changes color constantly. That's what reality is. We have to move away from this limited construct of what we feel or the science and understand that there's something beyond that where you have to include feelings, you have to include your personal experiences, you have to include data, obviously, and evidence, goes beyond these. And I feel that's where we're headed.
Yeah, man. I think UAP and the tridactyls, like humility is going to be the secret weapon to do that. And that like to close up, like that was my strongest memory of Dr. Zalce when we spoke to him. Like, the guy just wanted help. Like, he wasn't trying to sell a book, he wasn't trying to sell a movie or T-shirts or anything. He just wanted to understand this thing that he was looking at. And I
Right.
think, if we all had that attitude about pretty much every aspect of life that we don't understand, then we'd consume it a hell of a lot earlier. Well, dude, I can't thank you enough. So I'm sure we're going to see a ton more of you. Like, I'd love to follow up as your article develops. I'm going to put a link to your Substack in the pinned comment below, and I'm sure we'll probably cross paths on UAP files in the
Oh, yeah, for
future.
sure, dude. And thank you for having me. Thank you for giving the platform to this subject that's obviously very important, and everybody's like recognizing now. All the people that were very dismissive are now recognizing that there really is something there. Understand that this article that I wrote obviously is very premature. I haven't added all the citations that it needs, a lot of the pictures and videos that I want people to see. I haven't added those yet, so it's going to be a still developing article. Just have patience with me, and I will continue to try to answer people's as honest and as transparent as I can, because I also don't have all the answers. And understand that there's people that have been following and researching this far longer than I have, since 2016, right? And I just jumped on this. So what I saw, the number one need that I saw, is that there was not really a review, a crash course review for everybody that's unfamiliar with the subject to come in and have one sitting and just get familiarized with like everything, that this thing is proper. So that's what I hope to do. I hope I was successful in it, and I'm just excited.
It will be a great idea. Get a website. It's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because people are they're finding the truth from like this article, they're searching this, they're searching that. But if we can have a central place so that all of the different teams can communicate their findings, I think it would just make it much more easier.
Rock and roll. Great, man. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what comes next. Thanks again, dude.
All right, man. Be well.